Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. The station was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It spun slowly in space around a distant planet, its metal surface gleaming under the light of an alien sun. "We're getting close, Captain," said Lieutenant Dave Parker from his station. "The aliens are sending us docking instructions." Jake nodded. After 3 weeks of travel through space, they had finally reached the Galactic Council's main station. Ambassador Lisa Turner stood beside him, looking calm, but tense. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, the blue fabric crisp and clean. Behind her stood her team of advisors and translators. "Remember," Lisa said quietly, "we're here to talk about trade agreements. Nothing more. Earth needs these resources, but we need to stay friendly." The station was enormous. As their ship moved closer, Jake could see other alien vessels docked at various ports. Long, snake-like ships that belonged to the Zephyrians. Round, pod-shaped craft from the Kethavar. Ships from dozens of other species that made up the Galactic. Council humans had only joined this galactic community 5 years ago. At first, everyone seemed happy to meet them. Earth had things the aliens wanted: art, music, and unique foods. The aliens had technology and resources that could help humanity spread to new worlds, but lately things had changed. The alien species seemed worried about how fast humans were building new colonies. In just 5 years, Earth had established settlements on 20 different worlds. Other species had taken centuries to spread that far. "Docking complete," announced Dave. "The aliens are waiting for us." Lisa straightened her uniform. "Let's go make some friends," she said, but Jake could hear the worry in her voice. The docking tube connected their ship to the alien station with a soft thump. Jake watched on his screens as Lisa and her team walked through the tube into the station. The aliens had promised a simple meeting about trade routes and resource sharing. Everything should be easy. Jake waited on his bridge, monitoring communications. Hours passed. Then his communication officer, Sarah Kim, looked up with a frown. "Captain, I'm picking up strange signals. Lots of alien ships are moving around in space, big groups of them." "Moving where?" Jake asked. "Toward human space, sir. I count over 3,000 ships from different alien fleets." Jake felt his stomach drop. 3,000 ships was not a trade convoy, that was a war fleet. His communicator buzzed. Lisa's voice came through tight with fear. "Jake, we need to leave now." 20 minutes later, Lisa and her team rushed back onto the Liberty. Lisa's face was pale and her hands shook as she handed Jake a small crystal device. "What happened? In there?" Jake asked as his crew prepared to leave the station. Lisa sat down heavily in a chair. "They didn't want to talk about trade. The council leader, a big reptilian called Chancellor Vextar, gave us this." She held up the crystal. "It contains their demands." "What kind of demands?" "They want us to leave all our colonies. Every human, settlement outside Earth's solar system, must be abandoned within 30 days. They also want Earth to give them 60% of our resources every year as tribute." Jake stared at her. "Tribute? Like we're their slaves?" "That's not the worst part," Lisa continued. "When I tried to negotiate, to ask for different terms, Vextar laughed. He said humans are too aggressive, too dangerous. He said we spread too fast and take too much. The council has decided we need to be controlled." The Liberty undocked from the station and began moving away. On the main screen, Jake could see alien warships in the distance. Hundreds of them, all pointing toward human space. "They're not planning to wait for our answer, are they?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "Vextar made it clear. If we don't agree to their demands, they'll make us agree. He called it necessary correction of a dangerous species." Sarah Kim spoke up from her station. "Captain, long-range sensors confirm massive alien fleets are moving toward all our colony worlds. This looks like they're planning to attack." Jake activated the ship's faster-than-light communicator. "Get me Admiral Collins on Earth. Priority emergency." Admiral Pete Collins appeared on the screen within minutes. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes. Behind him, Jake could see the busy command center of Earth Defense Command. "Report, Captain." Collins said. Lisa stepped forward and quickly explained what had happened. She transmitted the data crystal's contents to Earth. Collins's expression grew darker as he read the alien demands. 60% tribute and abandonment of all colonies, Collins repeated slowly. They want to turn humanity into their servants. Admiral, Jake said, our sensors show over 3,000 alien warships moving toward human space. They're not waiting for negotiations. Collins was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Captain Morris and Ambassador Turner returned to Earth immediately. Use maximum speed. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. I'm calling an emergency meeting with President Sullivan and the Joint Chiefs. The aliens think they can threaten Earth and dictate terms to humanity. Collins' voice grew cold. They're about to learn how wrong they are. The connection ended. Jake ordered his crew to set course for Earth at maximum speed. As the Liberty jumped into faster-than-light travel, Jake looked back at the alien station, growing smaller behind them. Do you think there will be war? Lisa asked quietly. Jake watched the alien warships on his rear sensors. I think the war has already started. The aliens just don't know it yet. During the long journey home, Lisa studied the alien demands over and over. The terms were impossible. No human government could agree to abandon colonies where millions of people lived. No nation could survive giving away most of its resources to aliens. But the alternative was fighting against 3,000 alien warships with technology humans barely understood. Earth's fleet was strong, but much smaller. The aliens had been traveling space for thousands of years, while humans had only been building starships for decades. As Earth grew larger on their screens, Jake wondered what Admiral Collins and President Kate Sullivan would decide. Would they try to negotiate better terms? Would they prepare for war? Or would they find some other option that no one had thought of yet? One thing was certain. The peaceful days of human expansion were over. The galaxy had shown its true face, and it was not friendly. Whatever happened next would determine whether humanity remained free or became slaves to alien masters who saw them as nothing more than dangerous animals that needed to be caged. 3 weeks had passed since Ambassador Lisa Turner returned to Earth with the alien ultimatum. President Kate Sullivan had tried diplomatic channels, sending messages to the Galactic Council asking for new negotiations. Every message came back with the same response: comply or face the consequences. The consequences came at dawn on what humans would later call Black Tuesday. Captain Steve Baker was piloting his cargo ship, the trader vessel New Hope, through the asteroid belt near New Geneva Colony when his sensors started screaming warnings. Massive shapes were dropping out of faster-than-light travel all around the colony world. What the hell? Steve muttered, adjusting his sensors. The readings made his blood run cold. Hundreds of alien warships were surrounding New Geneva. Zephyrian dreadnoughts, each one the size of a city. Kethavar swarm carriers releasing clouds of fighter craft. Ships from a dozen other alien species, all pointing their weapons at the human colony below. Steve activated his emergency communicator. New Geneva Control, this is cargo hauler New Hope. You've got major alien fleet presence in your system. I count over 400 warships. The response came back filled with static and panic. New Hope, we see them. Colony defense forces are scrambling, but we're completely outnumbered. They're demanding our immediate surrender. Through his ship's windows, Steve could see New Geneva spinning peacefully below. The colony was home to 2 million humans, mostly families who had come here to start new lives. They had farms, schools, hospitals, and small cities where children played in parks under an alien sun. New Geneva Control, what are your orders? Steve asked. All civilian ships, begin immediate evacuation procedures. Get as many people off the planet as you can. Steve was already turning his ship toward the planet when the aliens opened fire. The first shots came from the Zephyrian ships. Bright green beams of plasma energy lanced down from space, striking the colony's defensive shields. The shields held, for maybe 10 seconds before they collapsed under the overwhelming firepower. Then the real bombardment began. Steve watched in horror as the alien fleet unleashed everything they had on the colony below. Plasma beams that could melt metal turned entire city blocks into rivers of molten glass. Particle cannons shattered buildings into dust. Missiles that could crack mountains struck the colony's power plants and communication centers. But the worst part was that the aliens weren't just hitting military targets. They were deliberately targeting civilian areas. Steve saw hospitals explode in balls of fire. Schools vanished under direct plasma strikes. Even the parks where children played were turned into smoking craters. "They're killing everyone," Steve whispered, his hands shaking as he piloted his ship toward the planet's surface. "This isn't a military operation. This is murder." Steve's cargo ship wasn't designed to carry passengers, but he crammed 200 terrified colonists into his cargo holds. Families with small children, elderly people, anyone he could fit. As his ship lifted off from the burning colony, he could hear people screaming through his ship's hull. "Please don't leave us," someone shouted through the communicator. "There are still thousands of people down here." Steve wanted to go back, but his ship was damaged. Alien fighter craft had hit his engines with energy weapons, and he was barely able to maintain flight. If he tried to land again, his ship would crash and everyone aboard would die. He was one of the last ships to escape. As the New Hope limped away from New Geneva, Steve looked back to see the entire planet burning. The aliens had turned a world of 2 million people into a tomb of glass and ash in less than 4 hours. Similar attacks were happening across human space. On Titan Base, Commander Lucy Hayes tried to coordinate a defense with only 30 military ships against 300 alien attackers. Her base's weapons managed to destroy a few alien fighters before overwhelming firepower smashed through their defenses. Lucy's final transmission to Earth was brief. "Titan Base is lost. Alien forces are bombing civilian shelters. They're not taking prisoners. They're not accepting surrender, they're just killing everyone they can find." The mining colony of Armstrong fell even faster. The 50,000 miners and their families had no military defenses at all. The alien ships simply surrounded the colony and fired until nothing was left but radioactive dust. At the agricultural world of New Kansas, families ran through burning wheat fields as alien fighters strafed them from above. The Kethvar seemed to enjoy hunting individual humans, chasing them down with small fast ships and vaporizing them with precision shots. The worst transmission came from Captain Roy Martinez aboard the colony ship New Horizon. His ship was trying to evacuate civilians from the research station at Proxima Colony when alien warships surrounded them. "This is New Horizon." Roy's voice crackled over the emergency frequencies. "We're carrying 5,000 civilians mostly, children and scientists. We're not armed. We're just trying to get people to safety." The alien response was to open fire. Roy's final broadcast lasted 7 minutes. Earth Defense Command recorded every second as alien weapons tore his ship apart around him. They heard the screams of children as the ship's hull breached. They heard Roy shouting orders to his crew as explosions ripped through the vessel. They heard him praying as the ship's reactor went critical. "Tell Earth." Roy's last words came through the static. "Tell them we tried to run. Tell them the aliens aren't interested in surrender. They want us all dead." The New Horizon exploded in a ball of nuclear fire, taking 5,000 innocent humans with it. By the end of the first day, 7 human colonies had been completely destroyed. 300,000 men, women, and children were dead. Entire worlds that had taken years to build were reduced to lifeless rocks floating in space. Admiral Pete Collins stood in Earth Defense Command, staring at the tactical display that showed red X marks where human colonies used to be. President Sullivan stood beside him, her face pale with shock and rage. "How many survivors?" she asked quietly. "Maybe 10,000, Collins replied. "Out of 300,000 colonists, we managed to evacuate 10,000. The rest are dead." "The aliens broadcast a message after the attacks," said General Alex Turner, reading from a datapad. "They're calling it the removal of humanity from the galactic stage. They say it was necessary to prevent human aggression from threatening other species." President Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was cold as ice. "Human aggression? They murdered 300,000 innocent people and they call it preventing aggression?" Collins nodded toward the tactical display. "Our long-range sensors show the alien fleets regrouping. They're preparing for a final assault on the Sol system itself. They want to finish what they started." "How long do we have?" Sullivan asked. "Maybe a week before they reach Earth's outer defenses." President Sullivan turned to face the room full of military officers and government officials. The Galactic Council wanted to see human aggression. They wanted to know what we're capable of when threatened. She walked to her secure communicator and entered a special code that only she knew. This is President Sullivan. Authorization code Alpha 77. I am activating Protocol Omega. All constraints are removed. I repeat, all constraints are removed. Around the room, officers exchanged glances. Protocol Omega was something most of them had heard rumors about but never seen activated. It was humanity's most secret and most terrible contingency plan. Admiral Collins, Sullivan continued, you have unlimited resources and complete authority. Show the galaxy what human retaliation looks like. Make sure they understand that when you kill 300,000 innocent people, there are consequences. Collins saluted. Yes, Madam President. The aliens wanted a war. They're going to get one. Admiral Pete Collins stood before the assembled fleet commanders in Earth's most secure briefing room. The faces around the table were grim. Everyone had seen the recordings from the destroyed colonies. Everyone knew that 300,000 innocent humans were dead. Gentlemen and ladies, Collins began. As of this morning, I'm ordering a general recall of all human military forces to the Sol system. Every ship, every station, every defense platform is to fall back to Earth immediately. Captain Amy Ward, commander of the experimental fighter wing, frowned. Admiral, that looks like we're preparing for a last stand. The aliens will think we're giving up. Collins smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's exactly what I want, them to think. President Kate Sullivan activated the room's highest security protocols. The walls hummed as powerful jammers blocked any possible alien surveillance. What they were about to discuss could never leave this room. The Galactic Council believes they understand humanity, Sullivan said. They think we're just another species that will follow predictable patterns. Fight a defensive battle, maybe. Negotiate for better surrender terms. Eventually submit to their authority. She gestured to Collins, who activated a holographic display showing star maps of the galaxy. Red dots marked alien homeworlds and major installations. Blue dots showed human colonies, most of them now marked with black X's. They're wrong, Collins continued. Humans don't think like other species. We don't fight wars the way they expect. And we've been preparing for this possibility longer than they know. General Alex Turner stepped forward. For 20 years, he had commanded a division that officially didn't exist. Operation Ghost Network has been active since first contact with alien species. We have assets embedded throughout Council space. The holographic display changed, showing dozens of green dots scattered across alien territory. Each dot represented a human agent who had been living among alien populations for years, sometimes decades. Matt Harrison has been working as a maintenance technician on the Zephyrian homeworld for 12 years, Turner explained. The aliens think he's just another human refugee seeking work. They don't know he spent 10 years in Earth's Cyber Warfare Division before he volunteered for Deep Cover. More green dots appeared on the display. Linda Ross manages a trading post in Kethvar space. The bugs think she's harmless, just a human who likes their music and art. They don't know she's been mapping their entire communication network. Ben Murphy works in the archives on the Council's main station. He's had access to every alien military plan and strategic document for the past 8 years. The aliens trust him because he's been so helpful and friendly. President Sullivan nodded. While the Council was planning their attack on our colonies, our people were learning everything about their military capabilities, their infrastructure, their weaknesses. Dr. Nina Foster, a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped up to the display. As head of the Prometheus Research Division, she commanded humanity's most advanced weapons programs. For 15 years, my team has been developing technologies that we hoped we'd never need to use, she said quietly. Weapons that violate every galactic convention about acceptable warfare. Weapons that other species would consider too horrible to build. The display showed technical diagrams that made even hardened military officers look uncomfortable. Nanite swarms that could disassemble matter at the molecular level, quantum viruses that could corrupt any computer system, gravity bombs that could collapse city-sized areas into microscopic points. These weapons were designed for one purpose, Foster continued, to ensure that if humanity was ever threatened with extinction, we could take our enemies with us. The Council's attack on our colonies has triggered that scenario. Captain Rick Stone, commander of the stealth ship UES Phantom, had been silent during most of the briefing. His ship was invisible to almost every known sensor system, and for the past month he had been conducting reconnaissance deep in alien space. The aliens have made a critical mistake, Stone reported. They've concentrated almost their entire military force for the assault on Sol. Their homeworlds are protected by minimal defensive fleets. They're so confident in their victory that they've left themselves wide open. Collins studied the tactical information. How many ships are they bringing to Sol? Over 4,000 warships, Stone replied, but that represents about 80% of their total military strength. If something happened to that fleet, their homeworlds would be defenseless, Collins finished. Excellent work, Captain. Dr. Foster activated another section of the holographic display. Admiral, my nanite swarms are ready for deployment. Captain Stone's reconnaissance has identified the optimal targets. We can begin the operation whenever you give the order. What about their communication networks? Collins asked. Agent Murphy, participating via encrypted transmission from the Council station, spoke up. Sir, I've had 12 years to study their systems. Every major alien government uses the same basic quantum communication protocol. If we introduce the right virus at the right moment, we can shut down their entire network simultaneously. Collins looked around the room. Ladies and gentlemen, the aliens want to see human aggression. They're about to discover that human warfare doesn't follow their rules. President Sullivan stepped forward. Admiral, I want to be very clear about your orders. The Galactic Council murdered 300,000 innocent civilians. They targeted hospitals, schools, and refugee ships. They've declared that humanity must be controlled or destroyed. Her voice grew colder. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Show them what human retaliation looks like, and make sure the rest of the galaxy understands that we are not a species to be trifled with. Collins saluted. Understood, Madam President. But I need you to understand what we're about to do. This won't be a conventional military operation. This will be total warfare using weapons that will fundamentally change how conflicts are fought. After this, the galaxy will never be the same. Sullivan didn't hesitate. The aliens made their choice when they murdered our people. Now they live with the consequences. Over the next few days, Earth appeared to be preparing for a desperate last stand. Human ships pulled back to defensive positions around the Sol system. Diplomatic messages were sent to the Council pleading for mercy and offering concessions. The aliens intercepted these messages and felt vindicated. Humanity was behaving exactly as predicted, gathering their forces for a hopeless defense and trying to negotiate from a position of weakness. What the aliens didn't see was Captain Stone's ship making precision strikes throughout their territory. The UES Phantom delivered Foster's nanite swarms to key infrastructure points. The microscopic machines were programmed to remain dormant until activated, invisible, and undetectable. They didn't see Agent Harrison uploading virus payloads into Zephyrian military networks. The viruses spread slowly, copying themselves throughout the aliens' computer systems while remaining completely hidden. They didn't see Agent Ross sabotaging Kethvar communication relays, installing hidden transmitters that would allow humans to take control of the bug's hive mind network when the time came. Admiral Collins played his part perfectly. He broadcast messages to the approaching alien fleet, asking for terms and offering to discuss surrender. He positioned Earth's defensive fleet in exactly the formations that alien tactical doctrine predicted. Meanwhile, hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars, a second human fleet waited in complete silence. These ships didn't appear on any official records. They carried weapons that had never been tested in combat, technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. Captain Amy Ward sat in the cockpit of her experimental fighter, the UES Reaper. Her ship looked normal from the outside, but its weapon systems were unlike anything ever built. She and her squadron had trained for 3 years to use technology that could alter space and time itself. The alien fleet was 2 days from Earth when Collins gave the final order. All units, this is Admiral Collins. Execute Protocol Omega. Show them what happens when you threaten humanity. Across the galaxy, human agents activated their hidden payloads. The aliens' confident advance toward Sol was about to become the biggest military disaster in galactic history. The Galactic Council's war fleet was one day from Earth when everything went wrong at once. It started with silence. Admiral Kethmore, commanding the Zephyrian flagship Dominance, was reviewing attack plans when his communication officer looked up with confusion. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Command Central. All our long-range transmissions are being blocked somehow." "Switch to backup frequencies," Kethmore ordered. The reptilian admiral had fought dozens of battles across the galaxy. Communication problems were common in space warfare, but the backup frequencies were dead too. So were the emergency channels. In fact, every form of long-range communication the aliens had was simply gone. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Agent Matt Harrison was putting the finishing touches on 12 years of careful work. The maintenance tunnels beneath the planet's main communication center were filled with cables and computer terminals that controlled the entire military network. Matt had spent years learning exactly how these systems worked. He knew which cables carried command signals, which computers controlled fleet coordination, and which servers stored critical battle plans. Most importantly, he knew how to destroy all of it without leaving any trace of sabotage. The quantum virus he uploaded spread through the Zephyrian network like wildfire. It didn't just block communications, it corrupted every piece of data it touched. Military records became scrambled gibberish. Navigation charts showed impossible star positions. Weapon targeting systems started aiming at empty space. Within hours, the Zephyrian homeworld's military was completely blind and deaf. Similar scenes played out across Council space. On the Kethvar homeworld, Agent Linda Ross activated transmitters hidden throughout their bio-neural network. The insectoid species shared a collective consciousness, but that made them vulnerable to exactly the kind of attack she had prepared. The transmitters sent contradictory signals into the Kethvar hive mind. Instead of shared thoughts and coordinated action, the bugs suddenly experienced chaos. Some thought they were under attack, others believed they were supposed to be retreating. Still others became convinced that their own allies were enemies. The result was the collapse of their entire collective consciousness. Billions of Kethvar across dozens of worlds suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds for the first time in their species' history. Most of them simply shut down, unable to function without the guidance of the hive. But the communication blackout was just the beginning. Dr. Nina Foster's nanite swarms had been dormant for weeks, spreading throughout alien infrastructure like an invisible plague. When Collins gave the activation signal, they began their work. The nanites were programmed to consume specific materials: the metal alloys used in spaceship hulls, the crystals that powered alien computers, the composite materials that held their space stations together. They didn't destroy these materials in explosions or fires. They simply took them apart, molecule by molecule. On the Zephyrian homeworld, massive space elevators that had stood for 1,000 years began developing hairline cracks. The cracks spread rapidly as nanites consumed the support cables from the inside. Within hours, structures the size of mountains collapsed into perfectly organized piles of processed materials. Spaceports across alien territory found their landing platforms dissolving. Warships in dock watched helplessly as their hulls developed millions of tiny holes that quickly expanded. Some ships managed to launch before the nanites could cripple them, only to discover that their weapons and life support systems were failing as well. The Kethvar's living ships, grown from biological materials, suffered an even worse fate. The nanites Dr. Foster had designed for them targeted the specific proteins that held their organic hulls together. Entire fleets of bioships simply fell apart in space, their crews dying in the vacuum. Admiral Kethmore aboard the Dominance was receiving frantic reports from across his fleet when the humans finally revealed themselves. "Admiral," his sensor officer hissed in panic. "Massive energy signatures emerging from the asteroid belt. I count over 200 human vessels." Kethmore stared at the tactical display. The human ships appearing on his screens were unlike anything in their intelligence files. These weren't the exploration vessels or light cruisers that Earth had shown the galaxy. These were warships designed for one purpose: total destruction. Admiral Ben Cooper stood on the bridge of the UES Devastator, the flagship of humanity's secret war fleet. For 3 years, these ships had been built in hidden construction yards throughout the outer solar system. The aliens had never suspected their existence. "All ships, this is Admiral Cooper," he broadcast to his fleet. "Remember what they did to our colonies. Remember the children they murdered. Show them what human warfare really looks like." The Devastator was the first of the Worldbreaker-class vessels. Instead of traditional weapons, it carried a gravity bomb that could compress matter into microscopic points of infinite density. Cooper's target was the alien fleet's massive command ship, a Zephyrian dreadnought the size of a small city. "Gravity. Bomb armed and ready," his weapons officer reported. "Fire." The bomb struck the alien dreadnought and activated. In seconds, the entire ship, along with its crew of 50,000, was compressed into a point smaller than an atom. The gravitational shockwave from the implosion damaged dozens of nearby alien vessels. But even that wasn't the most terrible weapon in the human arsenal. Captain Amy Ward piloted her experimental fighter, the UES Reaper, toward the alien fleet's flagship. Her ship carried a temporal displacement cannon, a weapon so advanced that most of Earth's scientists weren't sure it should exist. "Reaper to all human vessels," she transmitted. "Beginning temporal attack on flagship dominance." The temporal cannon didn't just destroy its target, it removed it from the timeline entirely. When Amy fired, the dominance simply ceased to exist. It hadn't been destroyed. It had never been built in the first place. Admiral Kethmore experienced a moment of perfect confusion as his memories adjusted to a timeline where his flagship had never existed. Then he died, along with everyone else who had been aboard the ship that no longer was. Other human ships carried weapons that the aliens couldn't comprehend. Quantum disruptors that phased matter out of existence. Stellar manipulation devices that could destabilize a star's fusion process. Consciousness bombs that targeted the electrical patterns in alien brains. Captain Rick Stone's stealth ship, UES Phantom, appeared inside the alien formation, having been invisible until the moment it opened fire. His ship carried nanite torpedoes that turned anything they touched into more nanites. 3 alien cruisers simply dissolved into gray clouds that consumed more ships. The battle was over in 6 hours. What had been a fleet of 4,000 alien warships became a cloud of debris and nanite swarms. The aliens had brought everything they had to destroy Earth, and Earth had erased them from existence. But the humans weren't finished. "All units." Admiral Cooper broadcast, "Begin Phase 2. Target alien homeworlds. Show them what total war means." Captain Ward's fighter squadron jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading for the Zephyrian homeworld. Captain Stone's stealth ships moved toward Kethvar space. The Devastator and its sister ships set course for the Council's main worlds. The aliens had wanted to remove humanity from the galactic stage. Instead, they had triggered something that would remove them. President Sullivan received the battle, reports in her situation room beneath the White House. The alien invasion fleet had been completely destroyed, without the loss of a single human ship. But she knew the real war was just beginning. "Admiral Collins," she said over the secure communication link, "the aliens murdered 300,000 of our people. They targeted hospitals and schools. They hunted down refugee ships full of children." Collins nodded grimly. "I understand, Madam President. What are your orders?" "Make sure they never threaten humanity again. Make sure the rest of the galaxy understands what happens when you try to exterminate the human race." "Yes, ma'am. We'll make sure the galaxy remembers this lesson for a very long time." In space around Earth, the debris from the alien fleet drifted, silently. Among the wreckage, human nanites continued their work, breaking down alien technology and turning it into raw materials that could be used to build more human ships. The aliens had come to destroy humanity. Instead, they had taught the galaxy a new definition of human retaliation. 6 months after the battle at Earth, the galaxy had become a very quiet place. Ambassador Lisa Turner stood in what used to be the Galactic Council's main chamber. The massive round room where dozens of alien species once debated galactic policy was now almost empty. Only 7 aliens sat in the hundreds of seats that ringed the chamber. They were the survivors, the representatives of species that had either stayed neutral during the war or surrendered quickly enough to avoid total destruction. Lisa wore her diplomatic uniform, but everything else had changed. The blue fabric now bore the insignia of the Human Federation, the government that had replaced Earth's old nations after the war. Behind her stood Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, commander of the most feared military force in known space. The Human Federation has reviewed your petition, Lisa announced to the nearly empty chamber. Her voice echoed in the vast space that had once been filled with alien voices. Earth will accept your surrender, but only under our terms. The few surviving aliens sat in silence. They had seen what happened to the Zephyrians and the Kethvar. They had watched human weapons turn entire civilizations into scattered refugees living in primitive conditions. Councillor Yithmar of the Altarian Republic was one of the 7 survivors. His people had stayed neutral during the war, but even they had suffered when the galaxy's communication networks collapsed. Now he spoke carefully, afraid that the wrong words might trigger another human retaliation. Ambassador Turner, the surviving Council species accept your terms completely. We will pay the reparations for the 300,000 humans who died. We will submit to Federation oversight of our military forces. We will. Lisa held up her hand and Yithmar stopped talking immediately. The reparations are not negotiable, she said firmly. 300,000 innocent people were murdered. Their families deserve justice, and the galaxy needs to understand the cost of threatening humanity. The aliens nodded quickly. They had seen the recordings of what happened to the species that had participated in the attack on human colonies. None of them wanted to share that fate. Admiral Morrison stepped forward. The Human Federation will establish monitoring stations throughout this sector of the galaxy. Any military buildup, any movement of warships, any sign that you're planning to threaten human interests will result in immediate intervention. He gestured to the view screen that showed the space around the station. Human warships hung in the darkness, their weapons trained on the alien survivors. The ships were sleek and deadly, built with technology that the aliens still couldn't understand. Junks, UES Retribution will remain here permanently, Morrison continued, along with a full battle group. Consider it a reminder of what happens when species try to exterminate humanity. On the Zephyrian homeworld, former Admiral Kethmore wandered through the ruins of what had once been his species' greatest city. The nanites had done their work thoroughly. Massive buildings had been reduced to perfectly organized piles of processed materials. Transportation systems that had worked for centuries were now just collections of sorted metal and plastic. 50 million Zephyrians had survived out of a population of 3 billion. They lived in small settlements scattered across their world, using tools and technology that were centuries out of date. Every piece of advanced equipment had been consumed by the human nanites. Kethmore picked up a piece of metal from one of the sorted piles. It had once been part of a starship, but now it was just raw material waiting to be turned into something else. The humans had left the materials behind as if to say, build something new, but remember who allowed you to survive. The Kethvar had suffered an even worse fate. Their collective consciousness had been shattered beyond repair when human agents corrupted their bioneural networks. Billions of insects that had once shared thoughts and emotions now wandered alone, unable to understand how to function as individuals. Most of them had simply shut down, sitting motionless until they died of starvation. The few survivors existed in small groups, trying to remember how to communicate without the hive mind that had guided their species for millions of years. Dr. Nina Foster stood in her laboratory on Earth, studying reports from the nanite swarms that were still active throughout alien space. The microscopic machines continued their work, breaking down any technology that posed a potential threat to humanity, while leaving basic tools and equipment intact. Status report, she asked her. Assistant, Dr. Tim Brooks. The nanites have processed approximately 90% of alien military infrastructure, Brooks replied. Weapons factories, shipyards, military academies, all reduced to raw materials. The aliens retain enough technology for basic survival and communication, but they couldn't build a warship if they tried. Foster nodded. What about the other species? The ones that didn't participate in the attack? We've left their infrastructure mostly intact, but they're all under Federation monitoring. Any attempt to build military technology beyond basic defensive systems triggers an immediate nanite response. It was a perfect system of control. The aliens could survive, even prosper, but they could never again threaten humanity. The nanites ensured that any attempt to build weapons would be destroyed before it could be completed. President Kate Sullivan sat in her office in the new Federation capital on Luna. Through her window she could see Earth hanging in space, blue and beautiful, and safe. The old national governments had been replaced by a unified human government that could respond quickly to any threat. Admiral Collins entered her office carrying a data pad with the latest intelligence reports. Madam President, we're receiving signals from beyond the explored galaxy. Another alien species is trying to make contact. Sullivan looked up from her work. What kind of signals? Standard mathematical sequences, attempts at language exchange. They seem peaceful, but we've learned not to trust first impressions. Sullivan thought about the lesson humanity had learned. When they first met the Galactic Council, humans had approached with open hands and peaceful intentions. The aliens had interpreted this as weakness and tried to enslave or destroy them. What's our response? Collins asked. Send a message, Sullivan said. Tell them they're entering human-controlled space. Tell them we're willing to talk, but make it clear that we're not the same species that first reached for the stars looking for friends. Collins nodded. What if they're hostile? Sullivan looked out at Earth, thinking of the 300,000 people who had died in the alien attack. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Council learned. Humanity is not a species that can be threatened, enslaved, or destroyed. We tried peace once. Now we enforce it. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, monitoring the galaxy's communication networks. The few surviving alien governments sent regular reports to Federation headquarters, detailing their activities and requesting permission for any significant actions. It was humiliating for the aliens, but it kept the peace. No species could build weapons without human approval. No government could make military alliances without Federation oversight. The galaxy had been pacified completely. Captain Amy Ward piloted her fighter on patrol through what used to be Zephyrian space. Her ship's sensors detected the usual signs of reconstruction, aliens building simple structures from the materials the nanites had left behind. They were slowly rebuilding their civilization, but it would take centuries to reach their previous level of technology. The temporal cannon that had erased Admiral Kethmore's flagship from existence was just one of dozens of weapons that humanity had revealed during the war. The aliens still didn't understand how most of them worked, which made resistance unthinkable. Amy's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from Admiral Morrison. All patrol units were receiving that alien signal from beyond the galaxy. They're requesting permission to enter Federation space for diplomatic contact. Amy smiled grimly. Do they know what happened to the last aliens who tried to give humanity ultimatums? That's exactly what we're going to tell them, Morrison replied. The galaxy has learned to be very quiet around humans. Let's see if these new aliens are smart enough to learn the same lesson. The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast, to the unknown aliens and to every species in human-controlled space. This is Admiral Morrison of the Human Federation. You are entering our territory. State your intentions clearly and be advised. We are not the same species that once sought friendship among the stars. We have learned that the galaxy respects only strength. The broadcast continued. Cross us, and you will discover why the Galactic Council no longer exists. Threaten us, and you will learn why billions of aliens now live under human oversight. The galaxy has grown quiet because it has learned to fear what happens when you murder 300,000 innocent humans. In the silence that followed, every species in the galaxy waited to see how the new aliens would respond. They had all learned the same lesson. Humanity was no longer interested in being anyone's victim. The age of human exploration was over. The age of human dominance had begun, built on the ashes of those who had thought they could treat Earth as just another primitive world to be conquered. The galaxy had wanted to see human aggression. Now they lived with the